They thought excluding my daughter was just a small decision. They didn't know that a 30-second choice could change 30 years of family relationships. My name is Maya Chen, and for the past 17 years, I've been walking the tightrope of single motherhood while keeping our family bonds intact. My daughter, Sophie, isn't just my world. She's the brightest light in our entire extended family. At 17, she's that rare teenager who actually enjoys family gatherings, who remembers everyone's birthdays, and who still hugs her aunts and uncles without being asked. My relationship with my sister Elena has always been special. 4 years younger than me, she's been my shadow since childhood. When our parents divorced when she was 14, I stepped up. I was the one who helped her with college applications while juggling my own pregnancy. I was the one who gave her my savings for her first apartment deposit. When Sophie was a toddler, Elena would come over every weekend, and the three of us became our own little unit within the larger family chaos. Elena called Sophie her practice daughter. She'd take her shopping, help with school projects, and Sophie would confide in Elena about things she sometimes felt too embarrassed to tell me. Their bond was something beautiful to watch. Sophie would light up whenever Elena walked into a room, and Elena treated Sophie like the little sister she never had. Our family operates on a simple principle. We show up for each other, always. When my uncle had his heart attack, we all took turns at the hospital. When my cousin lost her job, we pooled money together until she found another one. When Elena went through her messy breakup 3 years ago, Sophie and I were at her apartment with ice cream and tissues every night for a week. This is who we are. This is who I thought we'd always be. The pattern of sacrifice started early for me. After Sophie was born, I deferred my master's degree to help Elena through her business program. When she couldn't afford her certification courses, I picked up extra shifts and sent her the money. When she wanted to start her marketing consultancy but needed seed money, I took out a loan against my car. I never kept track, never expected payback. Family doesn't work that way. Sophie grew up understanding this dynamic. She saw me help Elena, and she learned that family means putting others first sometimes. She never complained when Elena needed something, never resented the attention or resources that flowed her aunt's way. If anything, Sophie was proud of having an aunt who was building something important. Elena's business took off 2 years ago. Suddenly, she was networking with people who owned houses in the hills, people who took vacations to places I couldn't pronounce. She started dressing differently, talking differently. She'd call less often, and when she did visit, she seemed distracted, like she was checking items off a list rather than genuinely spending time with us. I told myself it was just success changing her perspective. Everyone grows and evolves, right? I was happy for her, genuinely happy. She'd worked hard and she deserved everything good that was coming her way. Then she met James Morrison. The engagement announcement came on a Tuesday evening in March. Elena called me, breathless with excitement. "Maya, I have news! James proposed!" She was practically vibrating through the phone, talking about the ring, the restaurant, how romantic it all was. I was thrilled for her. Sophie was doing homework at the kitchen table, but when she heard the news, she jumped up and grabbed the phone. "Aunt Elena! Oh my God, I'm so happy for you! Tell me everything!" For the next hour, we talked about wedding plans. Elena wanted something elegant, something that would impress James's family and business associates. The Morrisons were old money, real estate, investments, the kind of wealth that comes with expectations and traditions. "His mother is very involved," Elena explained. "She has specific ideas about how things should be done. But Maya, I want you to be my maid of honor. And Sophie, sweetie, you'll be my junior bridesmaid, okay? We'll get you the most beautiful dress." Sophie was over the moon. She started researching hairstyles and makeup looks appropriate for a 17-year-old at a formal wedding. She showed me Pinterest boards of elegant updos and asked if we could start saving for a really nice dress. "I want to look perfect for Aunt Elena's special day," she said. I watched my daughter's excitement with such joy. This was what family looked like, sharing in each other's happiness, being part of the important moments. Elena had always been Sophie's role model for independence and ambition. Having Sophie as part of the wedding party felt like a natural celebration of their relationship. Over the next few months, wedding planning consumed Elena's life. She'd call with updates about venues, caterers, flower arrangements. Everything had to be perfect. Everything had to meet the Morrison family standards. I started to notice that our conversations focused less on Elena's happiness and more on logistics, appearances, and what James's family expected. "His mother thinks the reception should be more formal," Elena would say. Or, "James's aunt suggested we upgrade the menu." There was always another adjustment, another accommodation to make for people I'd never met, but I supported her. That's what sisters do. When she asked me to go dress shopping with her, I rearranged my work schedule. When she needed help addressing invitations, Sophie and I spent an entire Saturday at her apartment with calligraphy pens. When she had anxiety attacks about the planning, I listened and reassured her. Sophie continued to be the perfect future junior bridesmaid. She researched wedding etiquette, practiced walking in heels, and even started saving her babysitting money to buy Elena a special wedding gift. She wanted everything to be perfect for her beloved aunt. The shift happened gradually, then all at once. Elena's visits became less frequent. Her phone calls became shorter and more focused on wedding logistics than on catching up. She started using phrases like "James thinks" and "the Morrisons prefer" more often than she expressed her own opinions. I told myself this was normal pre-wedding stress. Planning a wedding while trying to impress a new family is overwhelming. Elena was probably just trying to balance everything and make everyone happy. But then the phone call came. It was a Thursday evening in August, 3 months before the wedding. Sophie was upstairs finishing summer reading for school. I was paying bills at the kitchen table when my phone rang. "Maya, we need to talk about the wedding," Elena said without her usual greeting. Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. "Okay, what's going on?" "There's been a change in plans. James's family, they have very specific ideas about the reception atmosphere. They want it to be more sophisticated, more adult-oriented." I waited, sensing there was more. "The thing is, they've decided that the reception should be adults only, 21 and older." The words hit me like cold water. "Elena, Sophie is 17. I know, and I feel terrible about it. But Maya, this is James's family. They're very traditional about these things. They think having teenagers at the reception changes the whole dynamic." I sat there, processing what she was telling me. "So, Sophie can't come to your wedding. She can come to the ceremony." "Of course she can come to the ceremony. It's just the reception that's adults only. Lots of weddings do this now, Maya. It's not personal." Not personal. My 17-year-old daughter, who had been planning and preparing and saving for this wedding for months, was being uninvited because she wasn't old enough for James's family's standards. "Elena," I said carefully, "Sophie has been so excited about this wedding. She's been preparing for months to be your junior bridesmaid. I know, and I feel awful. But Maya, you have to understand the position I'm in. This is James's family. These are people I need to have a good relationship with for the rest of my marriage. I can't start off by going against their wishes for our wedding." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Are you sure about this decision?" "Maya, please don't make this harder than it already is. Sophie will understand. She's mature for her age, and it's just one evening. The ceremony is the important part anyway." Just one evening. As if the reception wasn't the celebration, the dancing, the joy, the part Sophie had been most excited about. "Elena, if Sophie can't come to your reception, then we won't be attending." The silence on the other end of the phone stretched for several seconds. "Maya, you're being dramatic. It's not about Sophie personally. It's just a policy. And this is just my decision. If my daughter isn't welcome at your celebration, then I won't be there either." "You're seriously going to miss my wedding over this?" Her tone suggested I was being unreasonable, that I was the one creating a problem. But all I could think about was Sophie upstairs, probably still researching hairstyles for a wedding she was no longer invited to fully attend. "Elena, you're my sister, and I love you. But Sophie is my daughter, and she comes first. If she's not welcome, then neither of us will be there." "Maya, please think about this. You're talking about missing the most important day of my life. And you're talking about excluding the most important person in mine." The conversation ended shortly after that. Elena said she'd think about it, see if there was any flexibility, but I could hear in her voice that she'd already made her choice. James's family's comfort mattered more than Sophie's feelings. Their standards mattered more than 17 years of family love. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after that call, staring at the bills I'd been paying, thinking about all the ways I'd supported Elena over the years, all the sacrifices that had felt natural, necessary, loving, all the times I'd put her needs alongside Sophie's because family takes care of family, but apparently that principle only flowed in one direction. When Sophie came downstairs an hour later, she found me still sitting there. "Mom, are you okay? You look upset." I looked at my beautiful, kind, excited daughter and realized I had a choice to make. I could teach her that sometimes family disappoints you and you just accept it, or I could teach her that her worth isn't negotiable, not even for people we love. "Sweetheart, we need to talk about Aunt Elena's wedding." The wedding was set for October 15th at the Morrison family estate. According to Elena's social media posts, it was everything she'd dreamed of: elegant, sophisticated, worthy of the society pages. The photos showed cascading white roses, crystal chandeliers, and guests in formal attire that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Sophie and I spent that Saturday at the farmer's market and then at a little cafe we discovered downtown. We got pedicures and watched movies and made homemade pizza. It was a beautiful day, and I watched my daughter handle the situation with more grace than many adults would have managed. "Do you think Aunt Elena is happy?" Sophie asked as we walked through the market. "I hope so, sweetheart. I really hope so." "I hope she doesn't regret this later," Sophie said quietly. "I hope she knows what she chose." That evening, my phone buzzed with messages from family members, photos from the wedding, updates on the reception, comments about how beautiful everything looked. I noticed that several people asked where Sophie and I were, which meant our absence was noticeable. Elena didn't call that night, or the next day, or the day after that. A week later, she sent a text. "The wedding was beautiful. I'm sorry you and Sophie missed it. I hope we can talk soon." I read it 3 times before responding. "I'm glad it was everything you wanted. We're doing well." She called the following evening, but our conversation was stilted, careful. She didn't apologize for the adults-only policy. She didn't acknowledge that she'd chosen James's family's comfort over Sophie's inclusion. Instead, she talked about the honeymoon they were planning and how married life was treating her. I listened and made appropriate responses, but something fundamental had shifted between us. The easy intimacy we'd always shared felt strained, artificial. We were both pretending that everything was normal while carefully avoiding the elephant in the room. Sophie asked about Elena less frequently as the weeks passed. She'd seen how the conversation had played out, had watched me navigate the aftermath with quiet dignity. She learned something important about boundaries that month, about the difference between family that supports you and family that expects you to diminish yourself for their convenience. 3 months later, as November turned into December and Christmas planning traditionally began, I realized that Elena probably expected things to return to normal. She probably thought the wedding was behind us and we could all move forward as if nothing had happened. She probably expected me to send out the usual Christmas dinner invitations, to host the family gathering that had been our tradition for the past 8 years. She was about to learn that some bridges, once burned, don't simply rebuild themselves because time has passed. I was about to teach my family that actions have consequences, even when those actions come wrapped in wedding white and justified by other people's expectations. Especially then. The first week of December came and went without the usual flurry of Christmas planning phone calls from me. Every year since Sophie was 10, I'd been the one to coordinate our family's holiday celebration. I'd send group texts in early December asking about dietary restrictions and gift preferences. I'd plan the menu, assign side dishes, and transform our modest dining room into a warm gathering space for 15 people. This year, my phone stayed silent. By December 10th, my mother called. "Maya, honey, what's the plan for Christmas dinner this year? Should I make my usual green bean casserole?" "I'm not hosting Christmas dinner this year, Mom." The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. "What do you mean you're not hosting? We always come to your house for Christmas." Sophie and I are going to have a quiet Christmas at home this year, just the two of us. But Maya, this is tradition. The whole family comes to your house. Where is everyone supposed to go? I felt a familiar tug of guilt, the old programming that told me my job was to make everyone else comfortable, to be the one who sacrificed for the greater family good. But then I thought about Sophie, upstairs doing homework, the same Sophie who wasn't considered mature enough for Elena's reception. I'm sure someone else can host, Mom. Elena has a beautiful new house. I'm sure she'd be happy to start her own traditions as a married woman. Maya, what's this really about? It's about me taking a break from hosting this year. I could hear the confusion in my mother's voice. For 42 years, I'd been the reliable one, the one who showed up, the one who made things work. The idea that I might simply choose not to do something was foreign to our family dynamic. After I hung up, I felt a strange mixture of guilt and relief. Sophie looked up from her textbook when I walked back into the living room. Was that Grandma asking about Christmas? Yes. Are you okay with not having everyone over? I sat down next to her on the couch, really considering the question. You know what? I think I am. Are you? Sophie smiled, the first genuinely happy smile I'd seen from her in months. Mom, I think having Christmas just us sounds perfect. We can make pancakes for breakfast and watch movies all day and not worry about whether the house is clean enough or if we have enough food. That's when I realized how much the traditional family gatherings had become performances rather than celebrations. How much energy Sophie and I had been spending on making sure everyone else was comfortable while setting aside our own preferences. The phone calls started the next day. Elena called first, her voice tight with something between confusion and anger. Maya, Mom said you're not hosting Christmas. Is this because of the wedding? This is because I've decided to have a quiet Christmas with my daughter. You can't just break tradition because you're upset with me. The accusation hung in the air between us. I could have explained that it wasn't about being upset. I could have told her about the relief I felt at the thought of not spending Christmas managing everyone else's needs and expectations. I could have mentioned that maybe, after 17 years of hosting, I was allowed to take a year off. Instead, I said, Elena, I'm not breaking anything. I'm making a choice about how my family spends our Christmas. Your family? Maya, we're all your family. And yet Sophie wasn't considered family enough to be welcome at your reception. There it was, the thing neither of us had named directly since the wedding. That wasn't about family, Maya. That was about the reception atmosphere. Elena, do you hear yourself? You're saying my daughter's presence would have ruined the atmosphere of your celebration. That's not what I'm saying. That's exactly what you're saying. And now you're upset that I'm choosing to celebrate Christmas in an atmosphere where my daughter is fully welcome. Elena's voice got sharp. You're being ridiculous. You're punishing the entire family because you didn't get your way about one evening. One evening. As if Sophie's exclusion was a minor inconvenience rather than a fundamental statement about her value in our family. I'm not punishing anyone, Elena. I'm just not hosting Christmas dinner. People are free to make other arrangements. Maya, you can't do this. What about Mom? What about Uncle Robert and Aunt Sandra? They're expecting to come to your house. Then someone else can host them. I can't host 15 people. James and I don't have enough space, and we're still settling into married life. There it was, the assumption that had always governed our family. Maya will handle it. Maya will make it work. Maya will sacrifice her own preferences to keep everyone else comfortable. Elena, you have a beautiful 4-bedroom house and a marriage that should be strong enough to handle hosting your family for one afternoon. That's not the point. Then what is the point? The point is that you're supposed to host Christmas. You've always hosted Christmas. I felt something click into place, a clarity I'd been missing for months. I hosted Christmas because I chose to host Christmas. This year, I'm choosing not to. The conversation ended with Elena saying she'd figure something out, her tone suggesting this was somehow my responsibility to solve. My brother called 2 hours later. Maya, what's this I hear about you not doing Christmas dinner? Hi, David. I'm not hosting this year. But you always host. Yes, I always have. This year I'm not. David, to his credit, seemed to understand there was more going on. Is this about Elena's wedding? This is about me deciding that Sophie and I want a quiet Christmas at home. Look, I get that you're upset about the wedding thing, but Maya, you can't just blow up Christmas over it. Blow up Christmas, as if my choosing not to host was destroying something rather than simply making a different choice. David, I'm not blowing up anything. I'm just not hosting a dinner party. Christmas will still happen. Where? Elena can't host that many people and Mom's apartment is too small. I don't know, David. That's not my problem to solve anymore. The silence on his end told me he was processing something he'd never had to think about before, that Maya saying no was even a possibility. Maya, come on, don't be like this. Don't be like what? Someone who makes choices about how to spend my own holidays? You know what I mean. No, David, I really don't. Explain to me how choosing to have Christmas dinner at my own house with my own daughter is somehow wrong. He couldn't, of course, because when you stripped away all the assumptions and expectations, what I was doing was perfectly reasonable. I was choosing to spend Christmas the way I wanted to spend it, in my own home, with the person who mattered most to me. But reasonable wasn't the same as familiar, and unfamiliar made people uncomfortable. Elena called back that evening, this time with a different approach. Maya, I talked to James about hosting Christmas dinner. Okay. We can probably make it work, but it's going to be really stressful. We don't have all the serving dishes, and our dining room table only seats 8. I waited to see where this was going. James thinks it would be easier if we just did a smaller gathering this year. Just immediate family, me and James, you and Sophie, Mom, David, and Lisa. That sounds nice for you. But Maya, what about Uncle Robert and Aunt Sandra? What about the cousins? They're expecting a family Christmas. Elena, I'm sure they'll understand. Or maybe Uncle Robert can host. Uncle Robert can't host. Aunt Sandra just had knee surgery. The guilt was coming at me from all directions now. I was being selfish. I was ruining Christmas. I was forcing Elena to deal with logistics she'd never had to consider. I was disappointing people who had counted on our tradition. All of this because I'd decided that Sophie and I deserved to spend Christmas morning in our pajamas, instead of starting the day stressed about whether we had enough chairs and whether the turkey would be ready on time. Elena, I understand this is inconvenient, but it's not my responsibility to solve. Maya, please. Just this once, can't you host? I promise next year I'll take over. Next year. When the wedding would be further in the past, when Elena thought the uncomfortable feelings would have faded, when she could take credit for graciously taking on the hosting duties, rather than acknowledging that I'd chosen to step back. No, Elena, Sophie and I are having Christmas at home, just us. You're really going to do this? You're going to break up our family Christmas because you're mad about one evening? One evening. She kept coming back to that phrase, as if the significance of excluding Sophie could be minimized by the brevity of the event. Elena, I'm not breaking up anything. I'm choosing how to spend my Christmas. You're free to choose how to spend yours. But what about family tradition? What about it? Maya, family traditions matter. They're what hold us together. I thought about that for a moment. Elena, do you know what I think holds families together? What? Love, respect, consideration for each other's feelings, inclusion, making sure everyone feels valued and welcome. The silence on her end told me she understood exactly what I was saying. Maya, Elena, if family tradition mattered so much to you, Sophie would have been welcome at your reception. If holding the family together was your priority, you wouldn't have excluded a 17-year-old girl who has never been anything but loving and supportive to you. That was different. No, Elena. That was exactly the same. That was you deciding that other people's comfort and expectations mattered more than including someone who loves you. And this is me making the same kind of choice. So you're excluding all of us because I excluded Sophie? I'm including the people who have always included us. This year, that's a smaller group than usual. The calls kept coming over the next few days. My mother, frustrated and confused. My cousin Jennifer asking if I was okay and whether she should bring anything to Christmas dinner. My Uncle Robert, assuming there had been some miscommunication about the date. Each conversation was a small lesson in how much invisible labor I'd been doing all these years. The coordination, the planning, the emotional management of making sure everyone felt welcome and comfortable. No one had really understood how much work went into our family Christmas until I wasn't doing it anymore. Sophie watched me navigate these calls with what I can only describe as pride. She saw me setting boundaries, saying no without justifying or apologizing. She saw me prioritize our relationship and our peace of mind over other people's expectations. "Mom," she said one evening after I'd hung up from yet another call about Christmas plans, "I'm proud of you." "Proud of me?" "You're showing me that I don't have to say yes to things that don't feel right, even when people I love want me to say yes." That's when I realized that this wasn't just about Christmas dinner or Elena's wedding. This was about modeling for my daughter what self-respect looks like, what healthy boundaries look like, what it means to value yourself enough to make choices based on your own well-being rather than other people's comfort. This was about teaching Sophie that love shouldn't require you to minimize yourself. Christmas morning arrived quiet and peaceful. Sophie and I slept in until 9. Something that would have been impossible if we'd been hosting dinner for 15 people. We made pancakes and coffee and opened our presents in our pajamas. We watched movies and took a long walk in the neighborhood, admiring Christmas decorations and talking about everything and nothing. It was the most relaxed Christmas morning I could remember in years. My phone buzzed with messages throughout the day. Photos from Elena's smaller gathering, updates from family members who had ended up making their own plans, holiday greetings from cousins who seemed confused about why they weren't at my house. But the message that stood out came from my cousin Jennifer late that afternoon. "Maya, I don't know what's going on with the family drama, but I want you to know that Lisa and I had the most wonderful quiet Christmas with just our kids. Sometimes smaller is better. Hope you and Sophie had a beautiful day." That evening, as Sophie and I cleaned up from our peaceful day, she asked me something I hadn't expected. "Mom, do you miss them today?" I thought about it honestly. Did I miss the chaos of hosting, the stress of coordination, the careful emotional management required to keep everyone happy? "I miss the idea of them," I said finally. "I miss the feeling of being surrounded by family who love and include each other, but I don't miss the reality of what those gatherings had become." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I miss the family that would never exclude you from a celebration. The family that would prioritize your feelings over strangers' comfort. I miss the Elena who would have told James's family that her niece was non-negotiable." Sophie nodded thoughtfully. "Do you think she'll ever understand what she chose?" "I don't know, sweetheart, but I know what we chose. We chose each other. We chose peace. We chose to spend Christmas with people who value us exactly as we are." "Do you think things will ever go back to normal?" I looked at my daughter, this smart, kind, thoughtful person who had handled the whole situation with such grace, and realized that normal had never been as good as I'd thought it was. "Sophie, I think things are going to be different from now on, but different doesn't mean worse. Different might mean healthier." The weeks following Christmas brought a new dynamic to our family relationships. Some people seemed to understand that something fundamental had shifted. Others kept waiting for things to go back to normal, not realizing that normal had been the problem. Elena called less frequently, and when she did, our conversations stayed surface level. She'd tell me about work or her new married routines, but she didn't ask about Sophie's college applications or my job promotion or any of the details that had once been natural parts of our sisterly connection. It felt like we were both waiting for the other to apologize, but we were apologizing for different things. She wanted me to apologize for overreacting to her wedding decision and for ruining Christmas. I wanted her to apologize for valuing other people's opinions more than her relationship with Sophie. Neither apology was coming. My mother continued to call regularly, but there was a carefulness to our conversations that hadn't been there before. She seemed to be trying to figure out how to maintain relationships with both her daughters without taking sides, which I appreciated, but which also felt lonely. David and his wife Lisa started including Sophie and me in smaller gatherings, just their family and ours. These felt more genuine than the large family events had in years. Without the complex dynamics of managing everyone's personalities and expectations, we could actually enjoy each other's company. But the most significant change was in Sophie herself. She'd always been a thoughtful kid, but I watched her develop a new kind of confidence in the months following Elena's wedding. She started speaking up more in group situations. She began saying no to things that didn't feel right without offering elaborate justifications. She stopped trying to manage other people's emotions or make herself smaller to make others comfortable. "Mom," she said one day in February, "I'm glad Aunt Elena uninvited me from her wedding." The statement shocked me. "Sweetheart, why?" "Because it taught me that I don't want to be somewhere I'm not truly wanted. And it showed me that you'll always choose me, even when it's hard." That's when I realized that Elena's decision had given Sophie and me something valuable: clarity about our priorities, strength in our relationship, and the knowledge that we could trust each other completely. Spring arrived with new rhythms. Sophie got accepted to her top choice college with a partial scholarship. I got a promotion at work that came with more flexibility and better benefits. We started taking weekend trips to explore colleges and cities, something I'd never made time for when all my emotional energy was going toward managing extended family relationships. Elena called in April, 2 weeks before Sophie's 18th birthday. "Maya, I want to do something special for Sophie's birthday. Can I take her shopping? Maybe dinner at that restaurant she likes?" It was the first time she'd reached out specifically about Sophie since the wedding. "You'll have to ask Sophie," I said. "Will you ask her for me?" "Elena, Sophie is about to be 18. If you want to take her out for her birthday, you can call her directly." There was a pause. "Maya, I think Sophie might be upset with me." "Why do you think that?" "She doesn't call me anymore. She doesn't text. When I see her at Mom's house, she's polite but distant." I thought about explaining to Elena that Sophie had learned something important about relationships from the wedding situation, that people who truly care about you don't exclude you for other people's comfort, that Sophie had watched Elena choose strangers' opinions over family connection, and had drawn her own conclusions about where she stood in Elena's priorities. Instead, I said, "Elena, relationships require effort from both sides. If you want a relationship with Sophie, you need to build it. I've been busy with married life and work. Sophie's been busy too, with school and college applications and growing up. But she made time for you when she felt valued by you. Maya, are you saying I need to apologize to an 18-year-old? The fact that she framed it that way, as if Sophie's age somehow made her feelings less valid, told me everything I needed to know about whether Elena had learned anything from the past year. "Elena, I'm saying that if you want a relationship with Sophie, you need to earn it. Age doesn't determine whether someone deserves respect and consideration." Sophie declined Elena's birthday invitation when it finally came. She was polite but firm. "Thank you for thinking of me, Aunt Elena, but I have other plans." She spent her 18th birthday at a concert with friends, followed by dinner with me at our favorite restaurant. It was exactly what she wanted. A celebration with people who had always treated her as someone worth celebrating. That night, after we came home from dinner, Sophie and I sat on the front porch watching the stars. "Mom, are you sad that things changed with Aunt Elena?" "I'm sad that she made choices that damaged our relationship, but I'm not sad that we learned where we really stood with her. Better to know the truth than to live with an illusion." "Do you think she'll ever understand what she lost?" "Maybe. Or maybe she'll convince herself that we're the ones who overreacted, that we're the ones who chose to walk away. People often rewrite history to make themselves feel better about their choices. But we know the truth. We know the truth. And more importantly, we know our worth. We know that we deserve to be in rooms where we're truly welcome, with people who value us exactly as we are." Sophie leaned against my shoulder. "I'm glad you taught me that." "You taught me too, sweetheart. You taught me that protecting the people we love sometimes means making hard choices that other people don't understand." As summer approached and Sophie prepared for college, I realized that the past year had been less about losing family and more about discovering what family really means. It's not about tradition for tradition's sake. It's not about maintaining relationships that require you to diminish yourself. It's not about keeping the peace at the cost of your own dignity. Family is about showing up for each other, especially when it's inconvenient. It's about including rather than excluding. It's about choosing love over comfort, connection over appearance. Some people in our extended family had learned these lessons alongside Sophie and me. Others were still waiting for us to get over it and return to patterns that had never served us well. But Sophie and I had found something better than the old normal. We'd found a new way of being in the world, one where our worth wasn't negotiable and our love for each other came first. Elena kept her wedding photos prominently displayed in her new house, beautiful images of a perfect day, surrounded by people who met the Morrison family's standards. Sophie and I kept something different, the knowledge that we would always choose each other, that we could trust our instincts about who truly valued us, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to accept less than you deserve. It turns out that quiet strength is more powerful than dramatic confrontation, that walking away with dignity teaches better lessons than staying and compromising your values, that losing people who don't truly see your worth makes room for relationships with those who do. One evening in July, as we packed boxes for Sophie's dorm room, she found an old photo of her and Elena from years earlier. They were both laughing, arms around each other, faces bright with genuine affection. "I loved her so much," Sophie said quietly. "She loved you too," I replied. But love alone isn't always enough. Love has to come with respect and consideration and the willingness to choose the other person's well-being over your own comfort. Sophie nodded and placed the photo gently in a memory box with other keepsakes from her childhood. "I'll always treasure who she was to me," Sophie said, "but I won't accept less than I deserve from her or anyone else." That's when I knew we'd both learned the most important lesson, that setting boundaries isn't about punishment or revenge. It's about honoring your own worth and teaching others how to treat you. Sometimes the people we love most teach us the most important lessons about ourselves, not through their best moments, but through their choices when it matters most. Elena chose James's family's comfort over Sophie's inclusion, and in response, Sophie and I chose ourselves. We chose each other. We chose a different definition of family, one based on mutual respect rather than obligation. It was the best choice we ever made,